Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. This video is another car chat and is in response to a video request that I received. I've been meaning to record the past 2 nights and I just have not been able to because life. So I'm taking advantage of my time solo in the car right now to record this video. So I know once I get on the highway it gets a little, like, the background noise gets a little loud, so sorry in advance, but you know, gotta get it in where I can fit it. All right, so there's a few things that was kind of requested that I address. The first one being Latinos who can't speak Spanish. Okay, so this especially goes for like Hispanic Americans, you know, here in the United States. It can definitely be a sore point for a lot of Hispanic Americans because it's something that people like to point out, like, oh, you're not a real Latino, you're not a real Hispanic or whatever, you can't even speak Spanish, you're just like any other plain old American, you know. And sometimes, you know, you have your family members that may be like, well, you can't speak Spanish, your parents didn't teach you Spanish, and they can judge you kind of harshly because of that. You know, I have a cousin that moved from the Dominican Republic to the US when she was 4, and she's now what, like 27, and she can't speak a lick of Spanish. She completely lost it. Now her father, she was married to a white woman, so she was raised by her white stepmom. So I don't know if that, I mean, that might be part of it, even though her stepmom learned to speak a good amount of Spanish, and you know, she learned to despachata, she learned how to make sancocho, all of that, but she lost her Spanish in the process. And her father, my uncle, didn't really keep up with teaching her Spanish or, you know, practicing it. So over the years she just lost it. Even being around the rest of our family, she just didn't keep practicing it. So, you know, that happens as well. Now I do think that, you know, it's important to at least try and teach your kids Spanish. If you are in this country, like, you know, my parents did that with me, and my parents are actually really helping with my girls and their Spanish, because truth be told, I don't really talk to them in Spanish, but they've learned a lot already just from being around my grandparents, or being around my parents, which are their grandparents, and just the rest of the family. So like I said, it's definitely a sore point, and especially when a lot of Hispanic Americans already feel like they have to prove their, I don't know, being part of this other group. Kind of like I mentioned in my my Puerto Ricans versus New Yorkers video, how like one of the people that I spoke to, she said that sometimes the New Yorkers or the Puerto Ricans born here in the US feel like they have to like really prove the Puerto Ricanness, and they kind of like overcompensate by like repping Puerto Rico all day. Like, I think that actually goes for a lot of Hispanic Americans. Just feeling that need to rep the country your parents are from and stuff like that. But when you don't speak Spanish, you know, it does make that a little harder, and that reduces your validity of being part of this other group even more. You see this also with some celebrities like J-Lo, Eva Mendes, Eva Longoria. They did not know how to speak Spanish really, but as they got older, it looks like they learned. So at least they tried to learn Spanish. So I mean, you're not a completely lost cause if you can't speak Spanish. I mean, there's so many ways that you can learn, but I can definitely understand that it can be a source of feeling a little self-conscious about yourself, or like you're not Latino enough, you know, when you can't speak the language. Now, the second thing this person that requested this video mentioned was Latinos losing their culture due to assimilation. And this doesn't just happen here in the US. I mean, it can be Latinos that go anywhere else outside of their native country. And you know, a lot of Latinos do get kind of bashed for this, and you know, people talk down on them, especially Latinos here in the United States, for those that either assimilate into, like, you know, white American culture, and, you know, people call them whitewashed, or those that assimilate into Black American culture and the slew of things people say about them. But, you know, it happens. And on the one hand, I don't feel like you can necessarily blame some of these Latino Americans, or even like Latinos that come over here at a very young age and they end up assimilating into American culture, because that's just human nature. We assimilate to our environments, we adapt to our environments, and there's going to be cultural diffusion. You know, there's going to be aspects of the greater society at large, and traditions and habits that you're going to pick up. I feel like that's just inevitable unless you live in a really enclosed bubble. So, you know, that happens. But at the same time, I mean, I feel like it's possible to still keep remnants of your culture. Now, one example of this, which the person also provided, is the Argentinian people of Italian descent, and how the greater Italian community kind of looks down on them for not really preserving the Italian language and culture, which, being that so far removed from Italy, I mean, I can kind of understand, but at the same time, I feel like, well, what do you expect to happen? They're not living in an Italian society. They're going to assimilate into the society of Argentina, you know, which was what more is like Spanish, and there were a lot of Germans there, and then you also had the native and African influence. So I wouldn't have expected them to solely keep that Italian culture, you know. But again, people will look down on you. But like I was saying, I do think it's possible to I don't know if I would say assimilate, but to have those aspects of the culture in which you live, but also keep the aspects of your native culture. And using myself as an example, I was born and raised here in the US. There are things about American culture that I like. There's American genres of music that I like. American customs that I like and that I partake in and that I enjoy. But at the same time, I've always maintained the Dominican aspects of my culture. I learned to speak Spanish. You know, I love Dominican music, Dominican food, just everything about Dominican culture. So I've always been able to kind of balance both aspects, which, I mean, was largely due to my family and always being around Dominicans and speaking to them in Spanish. So, I mean, that helped as well. Now, the third thing that this person brought up for me to speak on was how Latinos born abroad in other countries, while they have pride in their native culture, they also have pride in their present nationality. So, for example, a Latino born in, I don't know, say France, let's say a Dominican born in France, they'll be proud of their Dominican culture, but at the same time, they'll be proud of their French nationality. Then they provided the example of people of Haitian descent born in DR. Although they are proud of their Haitian culture, they're so proud to be Dominican because that is their nationality. Another example would be, say, a Mexican born in Sweden. They'll be, or Germany, they'll be proud of their Mexican culture, but at the same time, they'll be proud of their Swedish nationality or their German nationality. However, when it comes to Latinos in the United States, it doesn't always work out that way. And like for me, I can't say that I've ever disliked or not had pride in being an American, but at the same time, that has never been the greatest source of my pride. My greatest pride has always been in my Dominican heritage and my Dominican culture. And for the most part, I think that is the case for most Latinos or Hispanics, whether you were born in the other country or whether you were born here in the US. Well, specifically, if you were born here in the United States and your parents were born in the other country. Now, this is something like I've kind of touched on before, which I think just has a lot to do with the American identity and what is perceived to be the American identity, which for the most part has always revolved around the Anglo-Saxon white person, you know, so it has always made other people, even if you were born here, felt as other. You know, it's like, I've kind of mentioned this before with like African Americans, at least from what I have perceived. Like, I don't think that most African Americans don't have pride in being American, but at the same time, it's like, I don't know, growing up in a country where you haven't been made to feel like it's yours, like always haven't been made to feel like you didn't belong type of thing, or being told, you know, go back to Africa and stuff like that. And then, you know, with Latinos, I mean, it's the same thing, even more, because, you know, Latinos are like the immigrants and the ones that definitely don't belong here, and at any time they can be told, you know, go back to your country. Even if you were born here, you can still get that. As long as you look Latino or whatever, people will easily tell you they're racist. Go back to your country. You don't belong here. Blah blah blah. Even online, I see people saying this is white people's country and stuff like that. So with all that being said, and kind of internalizing that, it doesn't really make Hispanic Americans feel like they can take a whole lot of pride in being American. Now, of course, I don't speak for all Hispanic Americans, but I think that's kind of like the general feeling you sometimes get. And so it's a lot easier to just take a lot more pride in like your cultural heritage or the country that your parents come from. So it's a very interesting dynamic when it comes to our experience here in the United States. You know, in my case, being a first generation American, I don't know, and it's just very weird. Like, even when going back to DR, or like my family members would call me gringa, you know, I always felt so weird about that. Like, I don't want you calling me gringa. Like, it made me feel like less than, almost. I don't know, it's very weird. Because, like, I'm over here trying to show to, you know, my family in DR and my cousins that were my age, like, I'm no different than you. At least that was my mentality. Like, yes, I might have been born in the U.S. Yes, I might speak English. Yes, I might eat hamburgers and French fries, because that's one thing they would always say. Oh, you guys like to eat the hamburgers and French fries and blah, blah, blah. But I'd be like, but even despite all that, I'm the same as you. I'm the same as you. You know, because I didn't want to be seen as being different from your everyday Dominican that was born over there. But at the end of the day, there are some differences between, you know, Latinos born in these countries versus those of us that are born here in the United States. And I think it's okay for us Latino Americans to embrace that. You know, at the end of the day, we're American just as much as we are descendants of these other countries, and that's okay. Like, that is something that I've kind of had to tell myself too, like, it's okay. I can have pride in being an American just as much as I can have pride in being Dominican, you know? So, you know, being a Latino, growing up in the United States, it's a very unique experience, especially, I think, as, you know, the generations go on to where you have now like fourth and fifth American generations of these countries, especially for the Latino groups that have been in the U.S. for so long. Like, you know, a lot of Mexicans, Puerto Ricans, Cubans, you have, you know, third, fourth, fifth generations of these countries. I think for Dominicans, we're mainly on like second and third generation, because the both Dominicans came in like the 80s and 90s. But, you know, like I said, our experience is very unique because we're exposed to so many different cultures, and it's hard not to somewhat assimilate into the cultures of the greater society. And then, you know, a lot of, as generations go on, a lot of them don't learn Spanish. Because think about it, if you were born to a second or third generation person from one of these countries that didn't learn Spanish, they just spoke English, that's what they're going to pass on to their kids, you know? So, you know, it is what it is. But, yeah, I definitely think it is, overall, though, going back to the not being able to speak Spanish, and then on top of that, assimilating into American culture, I definitely think that it can be a sore spot for Latino Americans. And it can be something that have your other family members kind of looking down on you, but at the same time, it's like, well, what you want me to do? You know, it is what it is. Just be proud to be who you are regardless. That's the way I see it, you know. But with that being said, I do think it is good for us Hispanic Americans to learn the language and to have a basic knowledge of the cultures and histories of these countries as well. Because as I've said in a previous video, I think understanding where you come from, the people you come from, understanding their histories, it really helps to learn who you are as a person. So with that being said, let me know your thoughts and opinions down below, especially if you are a Latino or a Hispanic American, whatever you want to call yourself, that maybe doesn't speak English. How do you feel when it comes to this? Or if you consider yourself to be someone that has assimilated more into American culture, how do you feel about that? How does your family feel about that? Let me know down below, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye.